NATO, the 32-member alliance that makes up the beating heart of U.S. national security policy, marked its 75th anniversary today at its headquarters in Brussels. And as the Washington Post puts it today, the alliance of now 32 members is, quote, older, arguably wiser, and freshly attuned to its own mortality. And that is because of none other than Donald Trump. Here's what he said about NATO recently.
When I said everybody's going to pay, they said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Not a golf course, but comments like that are leading members to ask what the ex-president's potential return to the White House would mean for NATO. Also, according to the Washington Post today, quote, in the weeks leading up to the meeting, the watchword in Brussels had been Trump-proofing. But discussions about how to actually protect NATO and its plans from Trump have been fraught. Among those who believe in NATO's mission, there's deep fear about what comes next. Kadi and Rick are back. And what's amazing is that just a teeny read of not even much history, but just recent history. We're the only country that's actually ever tapped into Article 5. We're the only country that's actually ever asked anybody to protect us when we were hit on September 11th.
Yep, that's true. The only time NATO has ever gone into action as a defensive alliance in that sense was after 9/11, when NATO countries came to help us in Afghanistan. Again, this has been said so many times, but Trump seems never to understand it. NATO is not a protection racket. It's an alliance. It's based on values. There's no membership fee. There's no sum you're supposed to pay in order to be a member, in order to get protection. The members of NATO help one another. And yes, we are at a moment right now when people are very worried that that principle might not apply anymore, both because the really extraordinary way in which U.S. Congress has continued to hold up aid to Ukraine at the behest of Donald Trump, who is running for president, and because of the comments that Trump made that you just showed. People are afraid that the U.S. no longer sees itself as part of the democratic world at all, and therefore won't be a reliable ally. And yes, they are beginning to think down the road, what do we do? I mean, in the next few months, Europe still needs U.S. weapons, U.S. supplies, but there is talk now of creating a large fund that will keep NATO sustained and keep the war in Ukraine going, if need be, over the next 5 years.
I mean, and former national security officials like John Bolton don't say Trump, whether Trump pulls out of NATO. They're trying to help people understand when he would do it. And John Bolton recently said that he would do it, quote, very early in the term. Do people take Trump both literally and seriously on this?
They do, because I think what most people don't realize is that although there's a NATO treaty and there's a NATO institution and so on, actually NATO is a kind of psychological promise. It's an assumption that one member of the alliance would defend the others, and especially that the United States, with its nuclear weapons, its nuclear shield, would come to the defense of its European allies. Once Trump says, I'm not going to do that, I don't believe in it, then the rest of it, the institutions, the relationships and so on, just don't matter as much. And then you could have an incident where Russia attacks a NATO ally, even just as a provocation, to see whether the U.S. president would respond. And of course, the fear would be that he wouldn't. So it immediately means that the danger level in the world goes up by 100 degrees.
Kadi, there has been this sense that, one, Trump doesn't always mean what he says. Two, he's too incompetent to carry out what he says he means. Or three, there would be guardrails. Trump 2.0 has none of those three things slowing him down. He's publicly aligned himself with the world's most brutal autocrats. He's not even pretending to find any value in NATO. And he's not pretending to surround himself with the likes of Secretary Mattis, Kelly, Tiller. I mean, none of those people are talked about as part of their Project 2025.
Yeah, I mean, you've got people like John Bolton and Mark Esper who are saying Trump's going to pull out of NATO quickly. But you even got people who have kind of kept close to Trump, who are clearly worried that Trump might pull out of NATO. Somebody like Marco Rubio, who at the end of last year managed to slip a sort of protection for NATO into the National Defense Authorization Act. It kind of didn't go very noticed. Now, Trump could kind of override that. He could effectively, as Anne brilliantly puts it, it's a psychological frame of mind. He could just kind of effectively pull America out of NATO. But I just thought it was interesting that Marco Rubio was worried enough about the prospect of Trump pulling out of NATO. Marco Rubio, who has stayed close to Trump, who may even work in a future Trump administration, that he managed to get something through the Senate. From NATO's point of view, look at those anniversary celebrations in Brussels today. Who are they talking to? They're talking to the Asians. You've got the New Zealanders, you've got the Japanese, you've got the Koreans. You kind of got this other area of the world. I mean, it's ironic that you've got this area of the world. If America first means Europe last, you've got Asia saying, you know what, we still want NATO. We still want those security protections. And I just wonder whether you're going to have a situation were Donald Trump to pull out of NATO, where you've got kind of Europe and Asia working together, and the United States, you know, America first might look like America alone.
I mean, it is sort of the reordering of the world order in anticipation of the possibility of him. That's how grave the threat is.
And by the way, the Europeans have been thinking about this and anticipating it. President Macron of France has been talking about having a strategic independence or strategic autonomy from the U.S. That's something that they've talked about for a long time. But it is this kind of unraveling of the post-war world that America helped form. And it's still just stunning to me that Donald Trump doesn't understand that, doesn't care about it, doesn't see how important it is. I mean, this has been the most peaceful era of modern history since the end of World War II, in part because of these institutions which he doesn't understand and doesn't like, including NATO, including the IMF, including the World Bank, including the UN, all of these things. He would unravel that, and that would have terrible consequences.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.